April 3rd, 1968. Northern Mekong Delta, Vietnam. Dawn hasn't broken yet, just a faint gray smear on the horizon when the river begins to breathe. Slow, thick, humid. The kind of air that clings to skin like wet canvas. A PACV hovercraft rumbles low over the water, its massive fans chopping the darkness into trembling waves. The crew Lieutenant Mark Ellison, Petty Officer, Raymond Holt, Gunner's mate. First Class Walter Red Dempsey and two Riverine infantrymen stand tense inside the armored cabin. Sweat drips freely despite the coolness of pre-sunrise. The Mekong does that to men. It makes them sweat even before they fear anything. Tonight the fear is real. Ahead the river narrows into a twisting passage hemmed in by reeds that rise taller than a man. These reeds sway gently, brushing against one another in the faint current, yet not a breath of wind touches them. To the river crews, that unnatural stillness is a warning more potent than radio intercepts or reconnaissance reports. Ellison lifts his binoculars, scanning the walls of vegetation. You feel that Dempsey mutters behind him. Yeah, Ellison replies softly. I feel it. The reeds seem alive, watching, waiting. The PACV slows as it enters the channel. Fan blades throttle down, transforming the craft from thunderous monster to cautious intruder. The river grows eerily silent. The only sound is water slapping the hull and the faint clicking of Holt's nervous fingers on the M60's charging handle. Floating debris bumps against the sides, twigs, coconut husks, and clumps of riverweed, but the men know better. Plenty of those clumps moved on their own before. The Mekong Delta is full of ghosts, and not all of them are dead. Ellison signals with two fingers. Stay alert. The infantrymen nod. Rifles' raised eyes narrowing as shapes shift among the tangled reeds. Somewhere inside that green labyrinth, Viet Cong scouts drift silently in sampans, their oars wrapped in cloth to muffle each stroke. Some crouch under mats of vegetation, letting the current deliver them like drifting mines. And then there are the hit-and-run teams, men who fire a single RPG from spitting distance and vanish beneath the reeds before the echo of the blast fades. Every U.S. river crewman knows the truth. The Mekong belongs to the Viet Cong. The Americans are guests, unwelcome ones. Red Dempsey adjusts the elevation on the turreted .50 caliber gun. If they're out there, he mutters, they've had all night to get comfy. The reeds to starboard ripple not gently, but in a sharp, sudden shiver. Holt points instantly. Movement. 3 o'clock. But the channel ahead twists, forcing Ellison to choose between maneuvering or firing blindly. Hold, he orders. No shooting until we're sure. The river narrows further, the banks closing in like jaws. The hovercraft's skirt brushes the reeds on both sides now. The men can see individual droplets sliding down the stalks, can smell the sharp green scent of crushed vegetation. The Mekong is swallowing them whole. Then clack. A sound barely audible, like bamboo tapping bamboo. Dempsey freezes. Holt swears under his breath. Every river crew knows that sound. It's the signal of a Viet Cong observer passing word to an ambush team hidden deeper inside the reeds. Ellison lowers his binoculars. Weapons free, he says quietly. The men brace themselves. Somewhere ahead, hidden by the crushing density of the delta, a sampan drifts into position. A man rises slowly inside it, hoisting a tube-shaped object onto his shoulder. His breath is steady, his feet planted, his eyes fixed on the shape of the American craft drawing nearer. The ambush is minutes, maybe seconds away, and the Americans are already inside the kill zone. The sampan drifts like a shadow beneath the reeds. Its hull barely touches the surface, gliding with the current. The Viet Cong rocketeer steadies his RPG-2 against his shoulder, the weapon's metal cold against his cheek. Through a slit in the vegetation, he sees the hulking American hovercraft, looming into view, fans whining softly as it creeps deeper into the corridor of reeds. He exhales once, slowly. On the PACV, Lieutenant Ellison feels the tension coil in his stomach, the way it always does right before something goes wrong. Dempsey keeps his finger hovering over the .50 cal trigger knuckle white. Holt leans forward with the M60 braced tight, his eyes darting between the left and right banks. The first hint comes as a ripple, faint, unnatural, moving against the current. Ellison opens his mouth to warn the crew, but the river answers first. A sheet of flame erupts from the reeds on the starboard side. A rocket streaks across the water, splitting the morning gloom with a shriek. RPG Holt screams, ducking, as the warhead slams into the river just short of the hovercraft. The explosion churns up a geyser of mud and water that crashes over the bow, drenching the crew and shattering the hovercraft's fragile silence. Ellison is already shouting orders, weapons hot, light 'em up. Dempsey's 50 cal roars to life, its heavy thumping echoing down the river like thunder trapped in a tunnel. Bright tracers tear into the reeds, shredding stalks, ripping open clumps of vegetation, turning the riverbank into a cloud of green mist. But the enemy is fluid slipping, diving, disappearing. A second sampan bursts from the reeds to port 3 figures crouched low inside it. One hurls a Chi-Com grenade, another fires a short burst from an old French T-49 submachine gun. Bullets stitch across the hovercraft's cabin, sparking off armor plates. One round punches through the thin side panel and lodges in the radio set, sending sparks flying. The grenade hits the water and detonates beneath the hull, lifting the PACV off the surface in a violent jolt. The crew is thrown against bulkheads. Holt crashes to the deck, gasping as his rifle slams into his ribs. Ellison fights to stay upright, gripping the controls with both hands. Hang on, bringing us around. The hovercraft veers sharply, spraying water in a wide arc. Dempsey tracks the fleeing sampan and unleashes a hail of fire. The rounds rip through its bow, splintering wood and flipping the craft sideways. 2 of the Viet Cong tumble into the water, vanishing instantly beneath the dark surface. But the Mekong's ambushes are never one and done. More movement stirs within the reeds, low whispers, bamboo tapping again, oars brushing silently through water. Dozens of eyes watch the Americans. Then the next wave hits. Automatic fire erupts from both banks simultaneously, a tight, disciplined volley. AK-47 rounds slam into the hovercraft's armored bow, punching dents into the metal and ricocheting off into the water. One round hits the periscope slit, inches from Ellison's face, spraying him with glass fragments. The river becomes a storm of muzzle flashes. Dempsey swivels the 50 cal, but the enemy fires and melts back into the reeds before he can draw a bead. Hit and run. Melt and move. The tactic is maddening effective and perfectly suited for this suffocating terrain. The Americans are firing at ghosts. Holt scrambles back to his feet and unleashes a ripping burst into a patch of reeds where he glimpsed movement. The rounds tear a hole, revealing only more reeds swaying behind it. "Where the hell are they?" Holt shouts. Dempsey grits his teeth. Everywhere. Ellison hears something else beneath the gunfire, the unmistakable creak of a wooden oar. Close. Too close. He spins toward the port side. A sampan is emerging right beside the hovercraft, concealed until the last second. 2 Viet Cong crouch inside, eyes cold, faces streaked with mud. One levels a pistol-gripped shotgun. The other lifts a satchel charge wrapped tightly in black cloth. Ellison's breath catches. Port side, port side. But the charge carrier is already rising, preparing to leap aboard. The Mekong tightens its trap. The Viet Cong fighter springs from the sampan bare feet, slapping against the hovercraft's metal hull as he lunges forward with the satchel charge clutched tight. His eyes lock on the cabin door. Victory is just a few steps away. But Petty Officer Holt reacts first. Holt doesn't have time to aim. Instead, he pivots, swings the stock of his M60 like an axe, and smashes it into the attacker's jaw. The blow lands with a wet crack. The satchel charge slips from the man's hand and tumbles across the deck. "Get it off the boat," Ellison shouts. The second attacker shotgun braced at his hip fires point blank. The blast tears across the deck, peppering the cabin wall and ripping through the strap of Holt's web gear. Holt stumbles, choking back a grunt. Dempsey whirls the 50 caliber toward the port side, but the angle is too tight. He can't depress the barrel far enough to hit the sampan. The shotgun-wielding VC pumps another round into the chamber, eyes full of cold determination. One pull of the trigger will gut the crew compartment. Ellison grabs his sidearm. Holt down. He fires 3 rapid shots. The first 2 smash harmlessly into the reeds. The third punches into the attacker's collarbone, spinning him backward into the river with a splash. The satchel charge is still ticking softly, a faint metallic rattle with every vibration of the hovercraft. Holt lunges toward it, but one of the Riverine infantrymen, Specialist Alvarez, is already there. Alvarez scoops it up in gloved hands and hurls it over the side. The explosion detonates midair in a blinding fireball, showering them with fragments of reed and burning cloth. The shockwave punches the hovercraft sideways, and then the river explodes again, not from the satchel charge, but from fresh gunfire erupting on both banks. The Americans are now the center of a tightening ring of ambushers. Rounds ping off the hull, tearing fresh holes into the cabin walls. One bullet slices through the radio compartment and sparks fly. Another round cracks past Ellison's ear, embedding in the bulkhead with a thud. "Forward! Push us forward!" Dempsey yells over the thunder. Ellison slams the throttle open. The fans roar, propelling the PACV down the narrow corridor. The reeds blur past them, brushing the hull like skeletal fingers. But the hovercraft can't outrun the Delta. The channel bends sharply ahead. As they surge around the bend, 3 more sampans drift into view. Not fleeing, not hiding, waiting. Each carries 2 or 3 fighters crouched low with rifles and grenades. Jesus Christ, Holt breathes. It's an entire platoon. The hovercraft can't slow down. At this speed, it will crash straight into them. Dempsey, clear a path, Ellison orders. Dempsey opens up the 50 cal, the heavy weapon, stitching the lead sampan with devastating precision. The wooden hull disintegrates into splinters. Bodies topple into the river. The second sampan paddles frantically to the side, fighters diving overboard before the incoming wall of fire reaches them. But the third sampan doesn't flee. It accelerates directly toward the hovercraft, a fighter in the bow gripping a wooden pole with something tied to the end. Alvarez sees it and shouts, "Pole charge, pole charge." The fighter leans forward, ready to slam the explosive bundle into the hovercraft's skirt. Holt braces his M60 against the railing and fires a savage burst. The rounds tear through the fighter's chest, but his momentum carries him forward. The pole strikes the side of the hovercraft. Boom! A violent explosion tears open the port side skirt. The blast jolts the entire craft upward, ripping part of the flexible rubber skirt free and sending it whipping across the water. The hovercraft loses lift and slams down hard onto the surface like a brick. Ellison's ears ring. The controls vibrate violently. Warning lights flare across the dashboard. "We lost the port skirt," Holt shouts. "We're riding heavy. They're no longer gliding. They're dragging and vulnerable." Dempsey scans the river ahead, face pale. "Sir, they're not done, because the reeds ahead are parting again. More sampans, more fighters, more shadows slipping into position. The first ambush was the welcome. This is the real trap tightening." The hovercraft groans under its own weight as the damaged port skirt drags through the murky water. Every bump, every submerged branch, every hidden sandbar sends a shudder through the hull. The PACV isn't built to survive this kind of punishment for long. Lieutenant Ellison grips the controls with white knuckles. He can feel the craft sagging deeper, losing its agility, becoming more boat than hovercraft. And on the Mekong, that is a death sentence. Dempsey lays suppressive fire, he barks. "I'm trying," Dempsey roars back, squeezing the trigger. The 50 cal thunders in deep rhythmic blasts as he sweeps the riverbank. Tracers carve glowing arcs across the reeds. They vanish into the green shredding vegetation, ripping open pockets of hidden fighters. The heavy gun momentarily stalls the enemy advance, but only momentarily, because from deeper inside the maze of reeds comes the soft sound the crew has come to dread more than gunfire, the gentle splash of synchronized oars. Hidden sampans, silent approach, coordinated. Alvarez curses under his breath. "They're boxing us in. Ambush inside an ambush." The reeds close in so tightly now that the men can barely see 5 feet into them. Shadows move behind the stalks, human shapes that vanish the moment the Americans redirect their weapons. The Viet Cong are ghosts in their element, agile, elusive, deadly. Then a new sound cuts through the chaos. A metallic clink. Ellison's eyes widen. Grenade in the reeds, starboard. Before Holt can pivot, his M63 grenades arc out from the vegetation, splashing into the water beside the hull with muffled plunks. Down Alvarez shouts. The river erupts. Columns of water hammer the port side, slamming against the weakened skirt. The craft lurches violently, sending Holt tumbling onto his back again. Dempsey nearly loses control of the turret. Alvarez and the second infantryman cling desperately to the railing. Ellison steadies the PACV, but now water flows freely into the torn skirt cavity. The craft is listing hard to port. Sir Holt gasps, "If we take one more hit like that, we'll swamp." Ellison knows, the Viet Cong know, the entire Mekong knows. Movement flashes in the reeds ahead. A squad-sized group emerges knee-deep in the water, holding rifles overhead as they wade into the channel. Their faces are painted black, their bodies half-submerged, perfect river phantoms. In one fighter's arms is a long bamboo pole tipped with another explosive charge. Another pole charge team. Engage, Ellison snaps. Dempsey swings the 50 cal and fires. The rounds roar across the water, kicking up geysers and tearing into the approaching fighters. 2 go down instantly. The rest scatter, diving beneath the surface like otters, leaving only ripples behind. The reeds on the opposite bank rustle violently, yet not a single leaf stirs from wind. The entire river is alive with movement. Holt braces himself and fires another burst into the right bank, sweeping from one patch of reeds to another. The muzzle flash lights up the inside of the cramped cabin. "Sir, we gotta move. We're sitting targets," he shouts. "I know," Ellison replies, "but we're dragging. We won't make speed." The second infantryman, Private Keating, suddenly jerks backward with a cry, dropping his rifle. A bullet tears through his shoulder, spraying the deck with blood. Keating's hit, Alvarez shouts, pulling the wounded soldier behind a bulkhead. Ellison feels his pulse spike. The enemy fire isn't slowing. If anything, it's building, thickening, concentrating. The Mekong is tightening its jaws for the killing bite. Another sampan appears from the left, gliding out of the reeds like a nightmare. This one carries only one man a fighter, standing tall in the stern, guiding the craft with a long pole. Strapped around his torso is a claymore-style directional mine, wired to a simple trigger. A suicide bomber. Holt sees him first, target left, target left. Dempsey wheels the 50, but the angle is terrible. The craft listing so far to port that the turret won't depress low enough to engage. The suicide bomber is closing fast, his eyes locked on the wounded hovercraft. Holt lifts the M60, but his line of sight is blocked by the damaged skirt. Alvarez curses, "I've got him." He raises his M16, but another burst of AK fire rips through the reeds, forcing him to duck. The sampan draws closer. 20 meters, 15, 10. The bomber pulls the trigger cable taut, and Ellison realizes the PACV is seconds from annihilation. Ellison acts before the bomber can complete the motion. He slams the throttle forward and yanks the controls hard, starboard forcing the hovercraft to lurch sideways despite the sagging skirt. The PACV bucks violently, engine, screaming, dragging a wall of water with it. The sudden maneuver throws the incoming sampan off balance. The bomber stumbles the claymore rig, wobbling across his chest. Now Ellison shouts. Holt doesn't hesitate. He lunges up from behind the railing braces, his elbows on the cabin edge, and fires a desperate burst. Tracer rounds carve across the water and punch directly into the bomber's torso. The man jerks backward. The trigger line slips from his fingers. The claymore detonates prematurely. A fireball erupts beside the hovercraft, close enough to scorch the paint, close enough to rattle teeth, but not close enough to tear the hull apart. Shrapnel sprays across the river like a hailstorm. Splinters of wood, metal, fragments, and bits of the destroyed sampan rain down on the deck. The blast also ignites the reeds along the portside bank. Within seconds, a wall of flames sweeps up the dry vegetation. Smoke billows into the sky. The entire left bank becomes a curtain of fire and shadows. For the first time since the ambush began, the Viet Cong falter. The fighters nearest the flames retreat instinctively, pulling back from the searing heat and shifting currents. The synchronized oar pulses vanish. The pattern breaks. Ellison sees his opening. "Push us through full thrust," he orders. "But the skirt," Holt starts. "I'm not asking. Do it." Ellison slams the throttle wide open. The fans roar so loudly the deck vibrates. The hovercraft surges forward, dragging the damaged skirt like a wounded animal, but gaining precious speed. Water churns violently beneath them, sending mud and reeds in all directions. The remaining sampans scramble to intercept, but the shifting smoke and chaos disrupt their coordination. Some fighters surface too quickly, gasping for air only to be cut down by Dempsey's relentless 50 cal bursts. Alvarez keeps Keating pressed beneath the bulkhead, applying pressure to the bullet wound. The wounded soldier moans but stays conscious. "You're good, man. Stay with me," Alvarez mutters, voice steady despite the adrenaline. The river corridor narrows again, but the flames spreading along the left bank begin to crackle higher, burning up more reeds, creating a widening lane of open air. The Americans finally have something the Mekong rarely offers: visibility. Holt sweeps the right bank with concentrated M60 fire, pinning down fighters trying to regroup. Dempsey zeroes in on a cluster of shadows emerging from the smoke. His heavy gun tears through them, scattering the survivors back into the reeds, some disappearing beneath the surface, leaving ripples trailing behind. For a moment, the only sound is the hovercraft's roaring fans and the crackle of spreading fire. Ellison grips the controls, jaw clenched. Don't slow down. Not for anything. The PACV barrels ahead, scraping against the water, bouncing hard as the damaged skirt drags over submerged roots and sandbars. But the speed holds. The craft forces its way through the gauntlet. Then Holt hears it. "Sir," something ahead. A faint rhythmic knocking echoes down the river. Dempsey lifts his head. "Is that bamboo?" It is. A line of bamboo spikes rises slowly from beneath the surface, concealed beneath mats of floating vegetation. A river barricade designed to impale boats and halt escape. A trap. A final choke point. The Viet Cong planned for the Americans to reach this spot. Holt's voice tightens. "We can't stop, sir. If we slow down, they'll regroup and hit us from behind." Ellison stares at the narrowing channel, the spikes emerging like the teeth of the Mekong itself. He has seconds to decide. Ram the barricade at full power, or try a desperate maneuver that risks capsizing the already damaged craft. Behind them, gunfire begins to rise again. The Viet Cong are regrouping. The Mekong is refusing to let them go. Ellison exhales and tightens his grip on the controls. "Hold on," he says. "We're not done yet." Ellison makes his decision. He doesn't blink, doesn't hesitate. He rams the throttle so hard the lever slams against its housing. The engines scream in protest. The hovercraft lunges forward with a violent jolt that nearly throws everyone off their feet. Water erupts in twin spirals behind the fans as the PACV charges straight toward the wall of bamboo spikes rising like a jagged fence across the river. "Brace," Ellison shouts. Holt drops behind the railing. Alvarez shields Keating with his body. Dempsey locks his legs around the turret ring and grips the 50 cal. Everyone holds their breath. The bow slams into the bamboo with a splintering crack that echoes across the delta. For a heartbeat, the hovercraft hangs suspended, half risen against the barricade skirt, dragging engine whining like an animal in its death throes. Then the bamboo gives. The PACV smashes through, tearing the spikes out by their roots, sending shattered poles flying in all directions. The craft lurches downward, slamming belly first into the water on the other side. A wave surges over the bow, nearly flooding the cabin before draining back off. But they're through. "Hull's intact," Holt shouts, breathless. Ellison wipes blood from his brow he hadn't realized was dripping. "Good. Because they're not finished." As the hovercraft clears the barricade, the river widens again. The smoke from the burning reeds behind them drifts into the channel, obscuring the ambush site. Shadows move inside the haze, small, dark silhouettes slipping through the reeds, repositioning. The Viet Cong are regrouping for one last strike. Dempsey fires into the cloud, the heavy gun thundering. "I got movement. Multiple contacts." Muzzle flashes against the smoke confirm it. The enemy is advancing in waves, now desperate to finish what they started. Rounds crack past the hull. Some ping off the last intact armor plates. One whizzes between Ellison and Holt, embedding into the canopy overhead. The crew is exhausted. The skirt is shredded. The hovercraft is barely afloat. But the river ahead begins to open wider, deeper. The narrow kill zone is behind them. Alvarez checks Keating again. The wounded soldier's breathing is shallow but steady. He's still with us, Alvarez reports. We need to get him to medevac. Ellison nods sharply. We will. Gunfire erupts again, the final push from the Viet Cong. Holt swings the M60 and unleashes a blistering burst into the reeds. Come on, he shouts, voice cracking. You want us. Come get us. Dempsey, drenched in sweat and river spray, fires in short, controlled bursts, now conserving ammo, but refusing to give an inch. Tracer fire lights up the haze in fiery arcs. Then the river's bend finally releases them. A gust of open wind sweeps across the deck. The reeds fall away. The Mekong opens into a broad junction of channels, a river intersection wide enough for speed maneuvering and escape. Ellison slams the throttle one last time. Full power. We're leaving. The PACV surges ahead, engines screaming, dragging the torn skirt, but building momentum. Behind them, the smoke thickens, blocking visibility. Muzzle flashes grow distant. Gunfire fades. The ghosts of the Mekong slip back into their reeds. Within minutes, the hovercraft reaches open water, a stretch of the river where air cavalry units, PBRs, and support craft routinely patrol. Safe territory. Allied waters. Holt collapses onto the deck chest, heaving. Dempsey finally releases the 50 cal trigger, hands shaking. Alvarez keeps Keating stable, murmuring quiet reassurance. Ellison eases the throttle back and allows himself a long, shaky breath. The Mekong Delta, the twisting green labyrinth, the killer of river crews, the master of ambush and hit and run, had done everything in its power to swallow them. But not today. Today, the Americans fought their way out. Ellison looks back at the smoke rising behind them, a wavering black column fading into the morning sky. Hell of a welcome, he mutters. Dempsey chuckles weakly. Sir, that was the worst morning commute of my life. Holt wipes sweat from his brow. Lieutenant? Permission to never do that again. Ellison cracks the smallest possible smile. Permission granted. The hovercraft glides into safer waters, battered but afloat, wounded but alive. The river behind them closes its reeds once more, swallowing the evidence of the fight as if the Mekong itself refuses to let outsiders remember its secrets. But the men on board will never forget. Not the reeds, not the shadows, not the sampans, not the sound of bamboo tapping in the darkness. For U.S. soldiers, the Mekong Delta was not just a battlefield. It was a nightmare with no edges and no mercy.